Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the definitions of and how we can view the power sharing or power distribution or representation distribution, if you like, that's brought about in a republic as versus, say, simple majority type democracy. Let's have a look at what got me to this. Was I was looking at some of the bluest states and regions in the United States, the Democrat states. These are the ones that, they're 75, 80% voting Democrat, and looked at the electoral districts in that region. Excuse me, to find that out of the 41 electoral districts, this is one of the bluest in the United States. Out of the 41 electoral districts, 35 of the 41 actually had a majority Republican vote, and only 7 had a, or 6 had a Democrat majority vote. The thing was that the population centers with the most people had they were Democrat, but out of all the districts, the minority were Democrat by quite a long shot. So if you look at the districts across the United States, you'll find that the areas where Republicans are the majority are the least populated, but the areas where the Republican the majority is by far and away the greater number of districts, by far and away. I mean, it's not close, it's by far and away. But the big cities, the big population centres tend to be voting Democrat. Now we can argue sort of why that is and why the Democrats vote in the city. We can debate that. But the issue here is if we're to have proportional representation, say in the Senate as it is in the case of the United States, where every state gets 2 senators, regardless of whether they've got a huge population or small population. This means every state gets an equal representation at the table. I think that's a good thing. I think outright majority, as in just simple majority type democracy, I don't think it really works. I don't think you'll find that in any advanced country. There's always things like upper houses of Parliament, or the hereditary House of Lords in the United Kingdom, or various upper houses, the Senate in Australia and so on. So there are various houses of review that don't represent or don't permit simple majority. Now, on top of that, you've got separate judiciary and other factors that act as checks and balances. So this simple concept that, hey, you get 50% of the votes plus 1, you've got total absolute power and control, do whatever you want and victimize everyone. But that's not the case in a first world country with, what was once a first world country with a sophisticated and advanced independent courts and again upper political houses such as Senate houses of review. And in the case of the United States, of course, it gets separated again by the authority of the office of the president. But this this representation thing, effectively in the United States now, provided all the major cities vote primarily Democrat, the Democrats can win just on the big cities, which is, whether it's a simple majority or not, but they can win, say, a presidential election, but also elect, members to the House of Representatives, and then you can get insane situations like, you look at Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush and AOC. I mean, these people got IQs of minus 10 million. I mean, they shouldn't be they shouldn't be in any. And I think it's a way the globalists use to just degrade our political institutions, so we lose faith in them, which then means we accept sort of the globalist imposition. Now, if you've got a strong, robust democracy, people will defend it and protect it. But if you can degrade it to the extent that the globalists are doing, quite successfully doing, by the way, all across the Western world, then it's much easier for the globalists to impose their own alternative system of governance, which they're busily doing at the moment. And when you look at that subversion, say you look at Canada, where a minority government, Trudeau, and you'd think Trudeau was just a king dictator. None of the checks and balances at any level, whether it be the courts, the opposition parties, or the houses of review, or none of the checks and balances that are in place that should hold a government to account, particularly a reckless, out of control lunatic like Trudeau. None of these checks and balances are working. None of them. And journalists that ask questions can be arbitrarily arrested that's how insane things are. So it shows that even a system with many checks and balances can still be quite easily subverted. In fact, the American system in totality is, even though it's the prize that they put more time, money, and energy into subverting than any other democracy around the world, it's still one that they can't quite nail it. They're getting there, but the mere fact that a candidate like Donald Trump is able to stand for political office, for the office of president, the mere fact he's able to stand there while the entire machine is against him is an illustration of the fact that the globalists still haven't managed to assert complete control over the United States. But this issue of representation is something that as in every Senate, every state gets 2 Senate seats, regardless of population. I think was very far-sighted, in my view, very far-sighted by the founders and the writers of the Constitution, and those who put forward the amendments and so on since federation. But this is coming to a local level, though. If you're in a state or a region with 41 electoral districts and only 6 of them vote Democrat, why does that end up with an 85% Democrat majority in that state when the majority of districts voted by a decent margin voted Republican? Should the Republic concept of distributed power sharing and the more equalized representation, should that be applied? Is that a way that the West can rescue democracy, whether in whatever form it's in? The people voting to decide their government. I use democracy in a generic sense there. Is that something that can be put in place or considered to prevent the globalists taking full control and using, as they say currently are in the United States, using the Democrat Party as their conduit to do that? In Britain, it's a complete uni-party system, and to some extent it is in the United States. Had Donald Trump not come along, I think it would be, would be complete uni-party. So they would neutralise the democratic process through that, just having a uni-party, which has proved quite successful in a lot of places across the West. So I think there's merit in this. I think there's something in it. If the majority of districts in say New York or Washington or places like that, the ones that are super Democrat left-leaning, even though they're perceived as left-leaning, it's really only because they get such a massive turnout or such a one-sided turnout in the big population centres. Outside of that, they've got very little sway. So it's worth looking at and saying, well, should separate districts, as in should a state be separated in terms of voting? Should it be separated into different regions with different members being elected for those regions? Should that be something that's considered in order to prevent the tyranny of the majority or the tyranny of the screaming leftists in the city? I believe if we don't do that in the West, that the uni party will pretty much everywhere assume total control. It will be, no matter how Republican or how many checks and balances are in place, it effectively will be a tyranny of really a small number of geographical areas dictating to the rest of the populace and the rest of the nation. Food for thought. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.